The following podcast is part of the Underdog Sports Podcast Network. For advertising information or to find more great podcasts, visit us at www.theunderdogsports.com and follow us on Twitter at RealTheUnderdog.
Okay. Well, just for the record, we got Sonny in Phoenix too. 52 to.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sonny and Phoenix podcast, a weekly podcast where we keep you up to date on everything Phoenix Suns basketball. My name is Charlie Erling, and as always, I'm joined by Mitch Krumpetich.
Well, hi.
Well, hello.
Hi.
And this week on the show, we will be telling you 10 things that everyone should know about the Phoenix Suns. Some of these are a little old school, some of them are current. You know, it's just some things that me and Mitch want to talk about, and that's what's going to happen on today's show.
Before we get into that, though, I want to do a quick NBA update.
Follow us on Twitter at SunnyandPHXPod. Same thing for Instagram. Go on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review and a comment, and you will get a shout out on the show.
So, with a call that Adam Silver had with the Players Association, it's been determined that the NBA really won't be making any decisions anytime soon. They've decided that they really could be making the decision on restarting the season as late as June, possibly even later. And it's looking more and more like next season will start in December or January, and most likely without fans until we have a vaccine. So we're really not sure when that will be, but I'm pretty much banking on the fact that the NBA won't have fans in attendance until there's a vaccine for this. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, teams are able to reopen their practice facilities like we talked about last week, with all of the restrictions of, only 4 players in the practice facility at once, people staying 12 feet apart, actually, rather than 6. All of the staff members have to wear masks and gloves. Kevin Love actually came out and said it was kind of weird to be back in the building with everyone like that, but it felt really good to get some shots up again. So that was pretty interesting. Salary cap, that's going to be affected. There's definitely going to be a lowering of that, it's looking like. And then the idea of having either 1 or 2 cities where basketball takes place for the rest of the season in the playoffs. It's looking like Orlando and Las Vegas are the top choices. We're not necessarily sure if it will be just one of those or both of those, and there'll be a little bit of traveling on like private planes. Still trying to figure that out, but it's looking like that's going to be the best option. As far as testing goes, Adam Silver said it's looking like there is going to be enough testing available to the general public for the NBA to use the 15,000 tests or so that they would need to be able to test players every single day. The only issue with that is if a player were to test positive, he would just have to isolate for 14 days and the season would continue. That's what it's looking like. So that's kind of tough, but all of this is kind of tough. So still trying to kind of figure that out, but we're making some progress having those conversations. The other thing is Adam Silver said there would be a minimum of a 3-week training camp before resuming the season, just so players can get back into playing and all of that to avoid injury and everything. So we'd have a 3-week training camp, potentially modified playoffs. We still don't really know, but we probably won't have anything officially until June or possibly later.
The one thing I did see was Silver did say he wanted 7-game playoff series.
Yes.
So that is something, and man, that is going to take up some time. I'm really interested to see how this timetable looks. They're saying a December or January start to next year. That's a lot of stuff to fill in this timetable. So I'm just excited to see how it all gets resolved, and I'd love to see basketball again. I don't think there need to be fans in the stadiums for those guys to play a good game and us as fans to enjoy ourselves. Yeah, money's the issue, but I think it's I think it's time. I'm excited to finish the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. Definitely.
All right. 10 things everybody should know about the Phoenix Suns. We both came up with 5, and this is just, we're in a lull for times. We don't know if it's quite time for us to start recapping the team's players and the team as a whole, because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of the season here. So this is something that we just thought would be a nice little palate cleanser, I guess.
Yeah, let's just talk
things
about the Suns.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Suns, things that we think are cool or noteworthy or should be brought to the attention of a Suns fan. So I'll start things off. My number one thing that everybody should know is that Shawn Marion should be in the Suns' Ring of Honor and maybe even the Hall of Fame. I know it might be a little early for the Matrix to get into the Hall of Fame, but his 9 seasons in Phoenix, we were such a successful team, and he was just so good in every facet of the game. He averaged, as a Sun, 18.5 points, 10 rebounds per game, a couple assists, almost as many steals, 1.9 steals per game, 1.4 blocks per game. And Shawn Marion was such a big part of the team. When you think of those teams, it's Nash and Stoudemire are probably the first 2 guys that everyone recalls when you think about the era. But man, Matrix did all the dirty work for those guys, and he could still do it all on offense and defense. I just have a lot of respect for him, and I know maybe he's not in there because I know his exit out of Phoenix wasn't it wasn't the greatest thing, but you got to put stuff like that behind you, and this guy's very well deserving of the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Shawn Marion's one of my favorite players. He was a big part of those 7 seconds or less teams, and just a all-time great Sun. And the exit, yeah, it wasn't pretty, but I mean that shouldn't stop us from putting him in the Ring of Honor. There's so much more good than that. It's something we could definitely get past, and just look at the contributions that he's made to this team. He, could really do it all. Like you said, he was a big part of those teams, and without him, we would not have been nearly as successful. He was a huge part of all of that.
And this was before the era where there was a lot of 3-point chucking to the point what we see today. But Shawn Marion shot 34% from 3 while he was here. Made about 1 out of 3 per game. And with that form, I mean, come on. You got to give the guy props for just that. That shooting form may be one of the weirdest I've ever seen out of a wing player in basketball, in recent basketball history. That's just crazy. But he made him at a good clip, and obviously that wasn't his strong point. He was great at getting to the rim and getting his own second shot opportunities and all that. But man, he did everything. He wasn't a shooter, but he turned himself into one.
Right. I think about that. If Shawn Marion were to come into the league today, shooting with the form that he shoots with, I mean, coaches would be just correcting that like from the start, right? I'm sure they would. But when Marion was playing, they didn't. They're like, well, you're making enough of them, so just keep doing what you're doing. I think it would be a lot different today. But yeah, that form is, it's a big part of his game. I think it's something that's so recognizable too.
Oh yeah, and we used to kind of relate him and Josh Jackson in some aspects because they're both just such incredible athletes, but the shooting form is not pretty for either. And Josh's isn't anywhere nearly as bad as what the Matrix's was.
Right.
But you can tell that teams we have been, and I'm sure the Grizzlies are too, they're trying to clean up that shot form. So yeah, that's a good point. Would it get cleaned up now? Would he be as successful as a shooter nowadays? Who knows?
Yeah, it's a tough one. But my first thing that I think everyone should know, every Suns fan should know, is that Devin Booker is one of the best players to ever play in Phoenix. Originally, I was going to say he's a top 5 player for the Suns. I don't know if I want to go that far yet, because the more I thought about it, if you go back really old school, like Walter Davis, Alvin Adams, those kind of guys, you got to put them up there because they're just like historically great. So I think by the end of Devin Booker's career, he will be in that conversation. He'll be in that top 5 Suns player of all time. I may put him there right now myself, but I think the general public needs a few more years of him doing amazing things. But one of the best players to ever play in Phoenix. You've got to put Devin Booker right next to guys like Charles Barkley, Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion. Booker needs to be in all those conversations because what he does for our team is incredible. I mean, averaging 25 points a game over the last couple years or possibly more, having to run the point, carrying our just horrible teams. And now as things kind of start to turn around, it's all Devin Booker. Booker just does everything for this team. And we should not overlook the fact that he's one of the best to ever do it in Phoenix.
Yep. And I can already hear the arguments of Barkley won, Nash won. Why can't Booker win? And if Booker had a couple winning seasons under his belt at this point, no one would argue this point.
Right.
Absolutely not. But you got to see him start to win. And I agree. I've seen we've watched him play his whole career. You know, we didn't get to see every one of Nash's games or every one of Barkley's games, but we've been lucky enough to watch Booker, and the fact that we've seen him play hundreds of games. And we've watched all the Nash highlights and Barkley highlights, and, you know, super fans, you watch everything that you possibly can. But Devin Booker is absolutely special. And I've said it, I think, in terms of shooting guards, what I project is Michael was the best, Kobe is the second best, and I see Devin Booker becoming the third best, or maybe even up to a Kobe Bryant level, which would be insane, and he has a long ways to go. But I have faith in him. If anyone's going to do it, it's him right now.
Yep. He's got that work ethic. And then think about the things he's done that aren't necessarily Suns related. 3-point contests. He won. He beat Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in a 3-point shootout one year. Yep. He took second this past year, which, fine. But yeah, Booker can do that. He's been an all-star, and he will be an all-star again. I mean, he's just one of the greatest players we've had in Phoenix.
Totally agree. And as a whole in the Phoenix community, when you think of that stuff, he's just doing all the right things. And his play backs everything else up. He's a great guy in Phoenix. I think he's going to be on the Phoenix sports Mount Rushmore someday.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Number 2 on my end is that the Suns have a great starting lineup, but the bench is holding them back. And this has been thrown around for quite a while here, but I know it was recently brought up on the R Suns on Reddit again. I think by Zen.1.
Yeah.
That dude's been popping off.
Yeah, he's great.
He's been really putting out some advanced statistics.
Yeah.
Some beautiful stuff, and it's been fun to read.
His stuff is legit.
Yeah, check him out for sure. But from this, going by net rating, the lineup of Rubio, Booker, Bridges, Oubre, and Ayton is the second best 5-man lineup in the league. And that's for teams with a minimum of 200 minutes played. And oddly enough, a pretty young lineup from New Orleans is number 1 with Zion and Ingram and that crew. But this is exciting because we know we have 5 guys that can compete with any other 5 guys in the NBA, but we just need the bench fixed up. And that's entirely possible. We have all of our starters locked into contracts for at least a year or 2 more. And we need to figure out guys that we can plug in to fix everything else. It's crazy that those 5 guys can be so good, but when you take even one of them out of the lineup, it just starts to crumble. So this leads into another point I have coming later, but we have some money to spend this offseason quite potentially. And I really hope we do a good job filling those gaps.
Yeah, this starting lineup is awesome. Every one of these guys does a great job and brings something different to the table. We talked about Booker a bunch already, but Rubio is the point guard that Devin Booker has always needed, I think. It's such a great fit. Bridges is just this jack of all trades defender who his offensive game is starting to come alive. Oubre, great offensive game, hustles, good defense, the heart of the team, the emotional leader. And Ayton has come such a long way. His defense has really improved. He's got that low post game. Once he really gets everything together and figures out that he's 7'1", it's going to be really great. This lineup is awesome. And our bench, it's tough. It is tough. And we will be talking about the draft at some point on this podcast. We just need to figure out like when that's going to happen and how everything goes.
Right.
But, we need to really start investing in some backup kind of guys. Cam Johnson, still kind of a question mark. Up and down season. We know he's a good shooter. He's shown some flashes of other good things, but we still just haven't seen a lot from him because of injury. We've got a lot of free agents. We've got that cap space, like you said. Might as well just save that at this point for not this next offseason, but the one after that. But I think that as far as the draft goes, this stuff bodes well for us. We're not looking to fill a starting role. We're not looking to fill a big role. We're looking for things like backup point guard. I think it's safe to say there's going to be some decent backup role player kind of guys in the draft. There usually are. Now, there aren't as many like shining stars or big name kind of players in this draft, which is fine. It bodes really well for us and our needs.
Right. And if we're picking, say, 10th, we don't know since the lottery hasn't happened yet, but if we're picking around there, in recent years, that pick would be spent on someone that you hoped could start right now because we needed it. And now we're finally in a position where that isn't the case. We can take a guy for depth and one to groom to take over from Rubio in a few years. Even though, we have Ty Jerome and Javon Carter and Elio Kobo and Jalen LeCue. None of those guys, even next year, are going to be a backup point guard on a playoff team. Right. I don't think that's what they're about yet. I'm not giving up on them yet, but we need someone too when Rubio gets a little worn down since he's a little long in the tooth. He's going to get tired in the season, and we're going to need someone to really step up. And I don't know if one of those guys is it yet or even next year.
Right. Same thing goes for power forward. Now, Oubre is much younger. Oubre, Bridges, whoever you want to look at for that. Dario, Dario's a free agent after this. But backup power forward is another spot we really need to address. And, maybe that's more of a need at this point with all of those guys still kind of trying to get a chance. Or maybe we try to go for both. I don't know. But, we do have some good, opportunities to fill some roles for the bench. So I'm excited for this draft. But at the end of the day, this starting lineup is a joy to watch. And it took us the majority of the season to figure out that this is the lineup we need to be going with. Right. Once we figured that out, it went really well. So just stick with that for as long as you possibly can. Okay, so my next pick for 10 things everyone should know about the Suns is about my favorite player of all time, Steve Nash. What Steve Nash did in his second stint with the Suns is unprecedented. We shouldn't overlook how amazing all of it was, and his 7 seconds or less Suns changed the NBA and really basketball as a whole forever. When Steve Nash came back to the Suns in 2004, he was 30 years old. He had played he played 2 seasons with the Suns, played quite a few seasons with the Mavericks, and was 30 years old when he came back in 2004. And he destroyed people. We all know about the 7 seconds or less Suns, how great they were. There's been books written about them and how influential their offense was, Mike D'Antoni and all of that. And I know Steve Nash gets a ton of credit and everyone here loves him. But we really need to look and see that he was 30 years old when all of this was happening. When he retired, he was almost 40, and he played a very long time. 10 seasons in total with the Suns. What he did was just, I can't think of another player in the league who has ever done anything quite like that.
No, I really can't either. It's amazing. And I'm trying to think of someone who was around 30 years. Oh, Jared Dudley. How old was Jared Dudley when he came back to the Suns? He was 31. So imagine Jared Dudley putting the team on his back and making them into a playoff team. Like, just imagine that.
Yeah.
We used, and Jared Dudley is a funny guy to maybe compare Steve Nash to, because, you know, he's got that thick set and he's never been in great shape. But they're like at that same age, Dudley with the dad bod by this time. I mean, then there's Steve Nash, who literally brought the Suns to glory, darn near. It's crazy to think about that. And I'm sure there's a better example that someone could think of that is maybe a little more similar to what Nash did, because Jared Dudley did nothing like it. I'm just going by age.
Right.
But it's such a good point. Being 30 years old, we start writing guys off by the time they're 30 nowadays.
Yeah. And on top of that, he had injuries. He had some issues with health, and, you know, his back was a problem throughout his career, really. And unfortunately, that was kind of his demise. But he came back. I mean, think about this. If you had a point guard who was pretty good, a good point guard, was a bit older, 30 years old, had some injury issues, that doesn't seem like the most attractive thing. But Steve Nash came, and the amazing medical staff the Suns had at that point revived his career. And, you know, he is one of the greatest point guards ever. No question about that. And possibly the best Suns player we've ever seen. Some people may say Barkley. I go Nash, but Walter Davis has to be in that conversation too, but it is a different time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, what Nash did is unreal.
Let's turn the clock back a second to you talking about Devin Booker being one of the best. Here's a guy who we drafted, and we have a really good chance of keeping him around for his entire career. Just imagine how he'll blow away Barkley and Nash when it comes to best son ever.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it won't even be a question. If he keeps up this pace and stays here for a long time, wow. That'll be special.
That's kind of wild to think about. I've never thought about it in that perspective.
Yeah, he has way more time to do it if he chooses to, and unless we blow something and upset him to the point where, I don't know.
Well,
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, Booker's played more seasons in Phoenix than Barkley has already.
Yeah.
That's weird to think about.
Yeah, but Booker hasn't taken us to a finals yet, so that's the kicker.
Yeah.
All right. So my third one here. The Suns have the 7th best overall winning percentage in the NBA. And just as a couple of years ago, we had the 3rd best or 4th best. I'm not sure. But since we've kind of come into these losing ways over the last 3 seasons, we've dropped down to the 7th best overall record in the NBA's history. That's pretty impressive. That's over 2,000 wins, less than 2,000 losses, a 529 winning percentage since the foundation in '68. So that's great. That's the Phoenix has been one of the more competitive teams in the NBA since they joined the NBA, and we need to remember that in times like these. Most people who were Suns fans before people of our era, and especially new Suns fans, they weren't used to losing. They don't know what this tastes like, what we've had to go through. And that must be rough. Imagine being a 80-year-old Suns fan right now and watching all of the stuff that they used to do compared to what it is now. I'd be a little jaded myself.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, this was actually the third thing on my list as well. Because I think it's important to know that we haven't always been this bad. I think it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, the Suns are just this like toilet bowl of a franchise. They've always been horrible. No, that's not true. It's the opposite. We've been very great for a really long time. And lately, we haven't been all that great. So let's change that narrative just a touch. It's not like we've always been horrid. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being like an 80-year-old Suns fan, like you said, and having to adjust to this because, we've been really bad for the last, let's just say since 2010, the last time we were close to the playoffs. That's 10 years. But in the grand scheme of things, that's not a ton since being around since 1968, All those other years, we were much better. Before 2010, or 2010 and before, we had lots and lots and lots of great seasons dating back to 1968. So kind of hard to look at in the present sometimes, but I recommend people to go back and watch these old games, watch the games from the 70s. I went back, probably a year ago and watched the playoff games from the finals in 1976, which I'll talk about a little bit. But it was, really great to watch all those teams and just to see how great we were back in the 70s. The game was so much different back then, obviously, but it's just so cool that we were able to make it that far. And unfortunately, the times we've been to the finals, we've ran into historically all-time great teams in the Celtics and the Michael Jordan Bulls, which, might I add, I am not watching The Last Dance because it's too painful.
Ooh.
I'm not into it because of that.
I haven't watched any of it yet because I missed it live the first week, and then I thought, maybe this will be a good binge on some weekend once it's all done. Mm-hmm. And then I saw all the talk on the Suns subreddit about, are you watching the Last Dance right now? It's not a good one for us. That will be a little hard to relive, but right. Again, just think about being in the finals. Think about being a playoff.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, that'd be nice, man.
Yeah, well, and I've heard The Last Dance is very well done. I may go back and watch it, but as a Suns fan and a John Stockton fan, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been seeing a bunch of clips from the episodes. I assume they're coming from the episodes on like the NBA subreddit.
Yeah.
And they're so just like behind the scenes moments with MJ. Those have been really cool to see.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah. You get a little taste of that competitive spirit and what it really takes to be the GOAT just by seeing how he interacts. Like when he's playing who could throw the coin closest to the wall. I'm sure there's a name for that. I don't know. But with like a security guard from the arena, and you can see it in his eyes when he loses. Like you can tell how mad he gets. It's funny, but then he throws a joke and he jokes it off and it's all good. But the dude hated to lose.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm excited. I really want to dive into that. Okay. Next one. So this comes for this upcoming off season here. We know that there could be a pretty big reduction to the salary cap. Nothing too wild, but it's going to put a lot of teams in a pretty sticky situation. There's going to be guys like contracts are going to need to be moved this year, and they're probably not going to get a good return for a lot of this stuff. So it's going to be really interesting, and especially when it comes to free agency. And with that, the Suns could clear up to $26 million in cap space this season. And there's not really a big name that we can really assume to get there, but this could be a really nice way for us to fill these holes that we've been talking about on the bench. So there's only a few teams that are going to have any cap space at all, and we'll definitely be one of them. And we do have to make decisions on Dario and Kaminsky, and I want to say there's a couple other guys Baines, yeah. There's decisions that have to be made, and if we say we want a clean scratch, let's find new guys for our bench, that can be $26 million worth of contracts we send out. I want Christian Wood on this team. I wonder what he's going to be getting.
Mm-hmm.
Who can offer anything that close to what we can, who needs a guy like Christian Wood? I think he'd be a great fit here.
I do too. I think, looking at, like we said, with the starting lineup, where the holes we're looking to fill are not high profile. They're not guys who are going to demand a lot of money. I think with all of the coronavirus stuff, a lot of guys might be taking what they can get at this point. So, you know, it bodes well for us. I still kind of think save as much cap space as we can, really. Fill a couple of those holes on the bench and try to land a big name next offseason.
That works too. Maybe we send out some, you know, maybe overpriced 1-year contracts to some guys just to get through this next season and have all that come off and be able to make a big move the next year. That could be interesting.
Yeah, we could. We have options though, which is nice because a lot of teams don't have any options. So, yeah. Okay, my fourth thing everyone should know about the Suns turns it back again. Charles Barkley only played 4 seasons with the Suns, but he led the team to the finals in 1993. We've only been to the finals one other time, like I said before. And even though Charles wasn't here long, he had a lasting impact on the organization.
That's just a fact right there, for sure.
Right.
It has to be... What proportion of this, what percentage would you say is personality compared to on the court production?
That's a good question. I think if you would have asked that 10 years ago, the answer would be different too. Yeah. Because at this point, I'd say it's probably 75% personality.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he was a great player. I mean, an all-time great player, long career. And he was only here for a little bit. But, I mean, we all know the stories of him eating pizza and trying to gain weight because of, you know, we don't need to go into all of these stories. There's so many. The Olympics, don't even need to go into that. But I think what is so overlooked by all of these stories is he was a really, really great player who put the team on his back like Nash, like we're hoping Booker can do, and led them to the finals where, unfortunately, they lost to the Bulls. But, yeah. So right now, yeah, it's way more a personality thing. But in the past, it was definitely just because he was a great player.
Oh, yeah. I love the old highlights where he was an absolute freight train, and comparing those clips to what we see in the NBA now, it's so much different. Like nowadays, you wouldn't see a 6'4.5" Charles Barkley go coast to coast, then just yam two-handed over everybody. Like that just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
But he was doing it. And he was undersized, and the rebounding was beautiful. Like he had the timing down. It's almost undescribable. Watching how Rodman did it, and Rodman knew the angle it was going to come off the glass and what happened when a certain guy shot. But it seemed like Barkley's was just pure timing. He could out-time everybody for those tips to himself and all that. It was really neat to watch.
Yeah, well, and think about this. Charles Barkley, he's not listed this way, but we've heard that he's 6'4". That's shorter than Devin Booker. And Barkley averaged about 11.5 rebounds a game.
Yeah.
Like, imagine Booker averaging, their games are night and day different, obviously.
Right.
But almost 11.5 rebounds at 6'4". That's like Rubio.
Yeah, that is. Rubio plus 50 pounds of slush. I'm not going to say muscle. But man, no, Barkley he just had that fast twitch gene. He didn't need to be a brick house to do what he did. He just had it. And right. I'm not taking away from, I don't know what kind of guy Charles was in practice or how hard he trained. I really don't know about that. But he had it. That's all you can really say. He had it.
He did. I mean, I think Draymond Green is an interesting comparison because people say, Barkley was Draymond Green before Draymond Green, except Barkley scored a lot.
Mr. Triple Single.
Exactly. Yeah. But, Barkley just took that Draymond Green kind of thing and he had it perfected. Guys like Draymond Green are just in the shadow of Charles Barkley. I'm not trying to say that Draymond Green is bad. I'm not trying to start anything like that. But I mean, that Barkley was doing all of that kind of thing long before a lot of these kind of guys.
I'll say that Draymond Green is bad when he's not paired with Steph and Clay.
Well, yeah, he did struggle.
It's time for us to kick the down to Warriors fans right now. This is our chance, so I thought.
Yeah, we don't
throw
get
that in
many
there.
of those opportunities.
Just one time. Okay.
We know what it's like.
All right, my last thing that everybody should know about the Suns. The Suns were the only professional sports team in Arizona from 1968 to 1988 when the Cardinals moved here. So that was 20 years of the Suns of Arizona being pure Phoenix Suns professional sports basketball. Imagine the hoopla when they get their first pro team and it's a basketball team in an indoor air-conditioned arena, and then you get to go watch these games and it's your first pro team. I'd love to be in that atmosphere. Who knows what it was like in 68, but I mean, the new teams coming to your state for the first time, I bet it was pretty darn near patriotic Suns fans here.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's wild to think that even up until 1988, the Suns were the only pro team in Arizona. Like, that's kind of weird to think about.
Yeah.
I know that was quite a while ago now, but 88 is a bit more fathomable. You know,
I was alive.
Right. It's more recent history. And to think that in that year, the Cardinals weren't even here, the D-backs weren't here, it was just the Suns.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to think about.
And now there's hockey. And I'm not exactly sure of the soccer affiliation, but I know that's a pretty...
They're not like MLS. I think they're a couple leagues below, but they are rising.
Hey.
But yeah, no Coyotes, no D-backs, no Cardinals. That's weird to think about because nowadays, well, maybe not nowadays, maybe this time last year, you'd have the opportunity to go to hockey, baseball, football, basketball, all pro, no questions asked. You don't even think about it. But back in the day, it was, if you wanted to see pro sports, basketball was your only option.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I've never thought about it like that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of diehard Suns fans because of that. A lot of the longtime Suns fans will remember these times and still treat the team as if they're the only team in Arizona, I think. Not that they don't like the other teams, but, you know, of the older Suns fans that I've talked to, I know that the attitude is very much like the Suns come first.
Yeah. I'd like to be part of something like that. I think of how people felt in Oklahoma City when the Thunder came there. Mm-hmm. Hey, here's a professional sports team. They're yours now. That'd be pretty cool.
That would be.
You know, me and you moved in how many years after the Suns have been a thing? And I don't know. It's just something neat to think about.
Yeah, it is. Another thing that's pretty neat to think about, especially as I was writing this out, for my last thing that all Suns should know. All Suns fans. I guess the Suns should know this as well. The Suns have had some of the NBA's most memorable role players. And I'm going to name a few. And this is going to be a wild ride. I'm sure other people will name other players, but these are a few that came to me off the top of my head. Raja Bell, Leandro Barbosa, Boris Diaw, Lou Edmondson, Oliver Miller, Marcin Gortat, Robin Lopez, Kurt and/or Tim Thomas, Cedric Ceballos, Frank Kaminsky, Rashawn Holmes, Eric Piatkowski, Pat Burke. The list goes on and on and on. We have had some characters come through Phoenix. Some of these guys have been great players too, but we have just had role players that big time diehard NBA fans know and love.
Yeah. You forgot Mike James though.
Oh my gosh. No, I didn't.
There were really some great names on this list though. And I mean, Raja Bell, the clothesline moment. I mean, rest in peace, Kobe. But I'll never forget that. That was a crazy moment, and Suns fans will never forget that moment. Sweet Lou Edmondson. That dude was a rebounding machine, and he had a great ponytail. I liked watching him play.
That's something you don't hear very often about an NBA player. He had a great ponytail.
He had a great ponytail. Marcin Gortat, the Polish Hammer. Him and Nash working that pick and roll. That became a beautiful thing for a little while there. Robin Lopez, when we drafted him, I didn't know what to think, but he's grown into just a lovable guy that the whole league likes now.
Mm-hmm.
And then my fellow South Dakotan, Eric Piatowski, shout out there. One of 2 NBA players from South Dakota that I can think of right now, the other being Mike Miller. So shout out to Eric P. He's from Rapid City. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had such a wild history of role players. And I think it's fun that even on today's team, we have a couple of these. I mean, I mentioned Rashawn Holmes, who's kind of a personality, you know. He's got the cool hair. He's a big highlight kind of guy. His mom's pretty vocal on Twitter. You know, we've had guys like that. Frank Kaminsky, I added. You've all seen the video. We've talked about it before, but of Frank Kaminsky doing the quarantine workout where he ends up jumping in his hot tub with his shoes on and all that. You know,
Yep.
We've had some great personalities in all of this. And like,
I need to talk about Frank real quick. Look how he comes to Phoenix and just immerses himself in the team with the hot guy celebration. He did that. I think he did that in the first game of the season, and then the rest of the team all caught on and they all loved it. Like, Frank seems like a guy who you should love.
right. And I should probably add Aaron Baines to all of this too.
Absolutely.
Baines fan club on Twitter, the big Aussie. We love him. The big beard, he grills a lot. All his Instagram stories are just like, oh, grilling pork belly today, or I love lamb, or whatever. And it's like, I would expect nothing less from Aaron Baines.
And you know what? Dragan Bender deserves a place.
You know what? I almost put Bender on this list, but
Yeah.
I realized that I said memorable, and I'm like, is Dragan Bender going to be remembered like 2 years from now?
As a flop, yeah.
As a flop.
With one of the best names.
True.
That's there. There was a lot of high hopes for Bender.
There were. Yeah, it's fun to kind of reflect back on some of these guys. And, I mean, let us know on Twitter who your favorite role players the Suns have had are. There's a lot more. I just kind of went off the top of my head, guys I could think of. But with that, it's time to move into the non-sports section of our show. And things are getting pretty warm in Phoenix. The temperature's rising. We've had a couple weeks over 100. It's going to be a little cooler this coming week, but summer's here. Summer's here for Phoenix, and we just have to accept that. So what is your favorite part of the summer?
Oh, I'm going to be a downer here. And it's even sports related, but I got to answer the question. It's going to Vegas for Summer League. And we were talking about this, personally the other day, and we're bummed out that we can't go to Vegas and watch the Summer Suns play. It's just such a great experience. It's something I always look forward to. It's a boys' trip. That's always pretty fun. Just go cut loose in Vegas for a few days. It's a blast. It's a blast. And it's the thing I always look forward to, because I always have a trip back home to South Dakota and then Summer League, and I just get hyped for the whole situation.
It is fun. I mean, we've done full episodes of how to make the most out of Summer League.
Yeah.
We've got it down pat at this point. Airbnb is the way to go. We do the whole casino thing 1 or 2 nights and then just relax, and it's all about basketball, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I'm really going to miss that this year for sure. And it's one of my favorite parts of the summer. I'm going to make mine even simpler. Swimming. Like, when it's this hot and you have the opportunity to swim, you don't have to have a heated pool. It gets over 100 degrees for a week or two, and you can just jump right in. most places have access to a pool in Arizona, so go swim. It's so nice.
It is. I've recently hopped in a couple of times, and it's finally to that point where it's, for me, I've kind of become a weenie, and I'll admit it, but it's to the point where it's refreshing, but not too cold.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little chilly, but just the perfect amount, and it's prime right now.
Yeah, I was swimming yesterday, and it was just like perfect. And you get out and you're like a little bit cold, but then you sit down on a chair for 5 minutes and you're like the perfect temperature.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
It's the stuff. And this is coming from a couple of Midwest boys who we suffered through winters.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm not trying to brag by any means, and this isn't a brag for Arizona people, but we were sitting in our pool a couple days ago, and I said, man, I love having a pool. Like,
Yeah, yes.
you know, I never thought I'd have a pool
I
living
know.
in South Dakota. That was
Yeah.
never on the brain. And
That's
now
right.
when I get a little warm, I can go hop in the pool, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing the other day that, growing up, we thought having a pool was just like the wildest thing possible. And here, it's just like commonplace. Like, if you don't have a pool, it's more like, oh, you don't have a pool? Like, why not? Like, that's kind of weird. And, it's just, it's something that I will never take for granted, because I know what it's like to suffer through those winters and to not have that kind of thing. So it's something that every summer I feel like I'm constantly on vacation in Phoenix, even when I'm working, just to go outside and have the weather be nice and to be like, yeah, oh, I could swim when I get home if I want. Like, that just blows my mind still. And I don't think I'll ever get over that.
It reminds me of my grandparents were snowbirds down here, and we'd fly in during the winter to come see them. And I remember being a little kid looking out of the window of the plane and seeing 9 out of 10 houses with a pool in the backyard in whatever part we were flying over at the time. I know it's not like that everywhere,
Right.
but just tons of pools. And I was like, this is what it's all about. Everybody has a pool here. They know what they're doing. And then, 20 some years later, look who moved down here.
That's right. Yep.
And
Those
got a
formative
pool.
years. Yeah, exactly.
That wraps it up. That wasn't an awkward ending. Normally we've been just on some really weird thing, and then we're like, yeah, we probably need to wrap this up. That was actually kind of normal. I don't feel weird about that one. But I hope you guys don't feel weird, because I'm making it weird, which I might be doing. But check us out, Twitter, Instagram, at Sunny and PHX Pod. Hit us up. We'll definitely hit you back. And come back for another episode of the Sunny and Phoenix podcast next week. We don't know what we're doing yet, but it's going to be a good episode. Tune in. Go Suns.